Good morning, good morning. All right, here we are for the Elk Mountain Mission and Chapter 5, Scouting the Red Rock Country. So last time we were working on, there's the peace treaty that allowed them to start searching in the southeast. And then we talked about how the road to the Spanish Trail was kind of formed through the different trades of the Spanish with the Utes, and that being a bad thing, and how that kind of came about. And also about a little idea of a colony of Welshmen that Brigham Young thought might be down here somewhere, so I thought that was cool. All right, well, let's go to scouting the Red Rock Country. William Huntington's scouting expedition left the frontier outpost of Manti on October 17, 1854. They took 5 wagons pulled by oxen. The wagons were filled with camping gear, food, trading goods, farming implements, and seeds. They had a few horses and mules to ride and use as pack animals if needed. But most of the men walked alongside the oxen. There was a serious shortage of horses on the early Utah frontier until the late 1860s. Cattle pulled most of the wagons and plows. On October 5th, Brigham Young, acting as governor of the Utah Territory, granted a license for expeditioning members to trade with the Indians. He didn't expect them to be gone for long. The license would expire 60 days from the date of issue. The timing of the scouting expedition was unusual. In most cases, such a venture would have been undertaken in the spring or summer. Obviously, Governor Young was in a hurry to discover what these men would find. His impatience suggests that he was already planning to send a pioneering party in the spring to plant a settlement somewhere in southeast Utah. A letter of instruction from Brigham Young was issued to members of a scouting expedition on the 9th of October. The letter reminded the men to be fair and honest in all their dealings with the Indians. The governor said he expected them to be good examples and always encouraged the natives to do right. He expressly gave permission for members of the expedition to trade with the Indians for personal profit, and he told them to take farming implements such as plows, shovels, sickles, and hoes, so they could teach the Navajos modern farming methods. Since the expedition was leaving in mid-October and expected back in the Utah valleys by mid-December, the instruction to teach farming is problematical. Did Brigham Young expect some expedition members to stay and live among the Navajos, teaching them to farm the following spring? If that was his intent, he did not express it in his letter of instructions. Obviously, a good portion of his instructions were given verbally and not recorded. It is unlikely that Brigham Young would have expected the men to bring wagons back to the Wasatch Valleys over the snow-covered mountains passes in late December. So if he didn't expect some of them to spend the winter with the Navajos, it was probably pre-planned that the scouting party would cache their wagons at a site suitable for future settlement and return to Springville on horseback. Well, if they were mostly walking because they didn't have horses. Anyway, I wonder if I think they were thinking of trading for them, or maybe. I don't know what the assumption of the historian is here. As for William Huntington, as he and his men prepared to leave Manti, he expressed grave concerns about his assignment. In the letter written to the Deseret News shortly after his return, December 28, 1854, he said, "We never felt more gloomy and doubtful, or undertook what appeared to us a more hazardous work during an experience of 20 years in the church. A wild, mountainous, and dreary desert, heretofore almost entirely unknown, lay before us. There were reasons to be apprehensive. The Treaty of Chicken Creek had concluded the Walker War only 5 months before, and there was lingering mistrust between the settlers and the Indians. Recent problems between Brigham Young and the New Mexican slave traders meant the Mexicans might be out for revenge as well. To further complicate matters, the Utes were aware of the purpose of the expedition and the fact that the wagons were carrying trade goods to their rivals, the Navajos. William Huntington told Deseret News, Walker and his allies had decreed that we should never pass. Then the expedition was going into unexplored territory to make contact with an Indian tribe they had never met before. The Navajos were famous craftsmen and herdsmen, but they were also famous warriors. Would they be willing to trade, or would they try to take the trade goods by force? No one could be sure. The explorers would also be traveling a rough desert trail that disappeared somewhere in the heat shimmer of the southern deserts. There would surely be rivers to cross, mountains to traverse, and deserts without water. And there were no settlements and no chance for help or rescue anywhere in the land they were about to enter. What dangers, trials, and tribulations might await them, they could only guess. Their only consolation came in the form of a priesthood blessing bestowed by Brigham Young. Their church leader met the expedition near the frontier town of Ephraim and blessed the company, conferring the protection, help, and guidance of the Almighty upon them. He promised that they would all go in peace and return to find all well with their families. All they had to do was exercise faith and diligence in the performance of their duties. With that hope and that promise, the exploring party left Manti on the morning of October 17th, 1854. In spite of Brigham Young's blessing, William Huntington's gloomy premonition was soon realized. As the party approached the old Spanish trail at the narrow mouth of Salina Canyon, they found the road blocked. A large party of Utes and Spaniards was camped on the trail, refusing to allow them to pass. Huntington said they were Walker's Sandpitch Utes, and he firmly believed Chief Walker was with them. Huntington estimated there were 20 Spaniards, New Mexican slave traders, in the Indian camp. This large number of outsiders allied with antagonistic Utes on the fringe of Utah's Sanpete Valley underscores Brigham Young's concerns about the open road from the east and the needs for a Mormon presence on the Spanish Trail. The likely intent of the Indians, and maybe the Spaniards too, was not to completely stop the expedition, but to extract a toll before allowing the travelers to follow the trail to the east. It was a common practice among the Utes. Dennison Lott Harris told his daughter-in-law, Alexa Curtis Harris, that Huntington's men were held up for 3 days while both groups postured and waited for the other side to back down. The Indians threatened to attack if the Mormons crossed the little stream. Huntington and his men undoubtedly threatened to send for the help for the Mormon settlements a few miles down the valley. The situation was tense. The Mormons were far outnumbered and outgunned, but unanimously resolved to go ahead. They considered their mission a sacred calling, and they would not turn aside or retreat without putting up a good fight, or at least a good show of firm resolve. With guns loaded, each side waited for the other to back down. Finally, in what William Huntington considered an act of divine intervention, the Indians and Spaniards quietly broke camp and left the area. By the morning of the 4th day, the trail was empty and open. With the test of their faith sanctified by courage and conquest, Brigham Young's expedition to the Navajos could finally begin in earnest. From the mouth of Salina Canyon, Huntington's men followed wagon tracks made by Captain Gunnison's government survey party the previous summer. The trail took them over Salina Canyon and into Castle Valley on the east side of the mountain. Castle Valley was new to the Mormons. Earlier exploring parties, looking down from the heights of faraway mountains, had deemed the place unfit for agriculture and made no effort to claim, settle, or properly explore the area. Castle Valley is a large horseshoe-shaped region, now encompassing much of Carbon and Emery counties. The horseshoe begins in the southwest Emery County near Interstate 70 and runs to the Book Cliff mountain range north of Price, Utah. The valley then curves sharply east and south, making a huge arc, following the Book Cliffs and Price River drainage to Interstate 70 again, near the town of Green River. In the middle of the arc is a large geologic uplift known as Cedar Mountain. The full rainbow arc of the valley from I-70 near Ivy Creek I-70 again near Green River is about 130 miles. See the map on page 8. I'm actually really interested in this because I always thought Castle Valley was just a small little... Oh. Oh. Then what am I thinking of? Okay. So they're saying the Book Cliffs, that's, like if you go from Salt Lake down to Moab, you go by the Book Cliffs. That's the, like, between, so you got to get up and over the mountains, and then on the other side of the mountains is Price, okay? From Price, that's the top of the horseshoe, and then the town of Green River is the open of one horseshoe. So, for example, it is, between my two fingers is the open horseshoe, and Price is at the top of that horseshoe. They're saying that's Castle Valley. Here, I was thinking Castle Valley was specifically right near Moab, right next to it, and that's apparently not. So I'm trying to think about what am I thinking of, because there's this kind of little spot that's, what they're talking about truly is like terribly inhospitable. You can see that. So here's the same region they're talking about. See I-70, and you can see the mountains and how they kind of hold in that valley, and then right through I-70 is this uplift, I guess. Kind of, it's actually, you're going down into it and then coming back out. They have Wedge Overlook there, which is really cool because it's like a miniature view of the Grand Canyon, but I did a overnight camp out there one time. It's a free camping spot, but Wedge Overlook is just beautiful. It's like a miniature Grand Canyon. So, yeah, it's really, really cool. Anyway, so I-70 kind of cuts right through that. And Goblin Valley State Park is on the other side of the Castle Valley area. That's interesting. Okay. So that's Castle Valley area. In here also is where they have a bunch of dinosaur kind of Manti La Salle National Forest. Wow, okay, Castledale, it's got Huntington along there. I remember that there's, around here, maybe on the south side of I-70, the spot where we have one of our famous dinosaur digs. And having been there, see, I'm used to going to Moab, which is, okay, you just get past Green River, and then you head south, because here's Green River in the upper there, and then you come down to Moab. So it's just kind of at the open lip, or etc., of where the horseshoe is that they've been talking about. But if you coming into Moab from the north, you're going to cross the river, and is that the Colorado River? What river is this? Yeah, it's the Colorado River. So you're crossing the Colorado River as you're entering Moab, the Valley of Moab. And if you follow a road that literally follows the river right then and there, and you go over quite a ways, there's a point where it opens up from being a narrow canyon, and you can head southeast again, and that takes you into what I think of as Castle Valley, which is this kind of lens-shaped valley with a what they call Round Mountain, which I suspect has, it looks like it'd be kind of like a little volcanic mountain in the middle of this. Now, it could have been that, or it could have been that that's just a spot that did not erode with the rest. So this is what I think of as Castle Valley. So, and that butts up right against the La Salle Mountains. So it's weird to me that in here, they're calling this Castle Valley, and it's just, I guess I don't understand the extent of the La Salle Mountains, because I'm used to the La Salle Mountains being south of Moab, or southeast of Moab, southeast of the Castle Valley that I know, which is that lens-shaped opening in the red rock on the other side of Moab to the east of it. So I'm just fascinated by this, because I didn't realize that there was so much other stuff, I should say, that was there. So, all right, let's keep going. So there's Castle Valley as in the Big Valley, and then there's that Lens Castle Valley that is east of Moab. Whew, interesting. The scouting party followed Gunnison's tracks north up Castle Valley to a point near Wellington. Then, crossing the Price River, they followed the river southeast to near the confluence of Grassy Trail Creek. Crossing Price River again, they traveled overland to Chimney Rock Flat, Cottonwood Wash, and eventually the Green River, still following Gunnison's trail. No one kept a journal of their daily adventures and observations. Somehow, William Huntington mislabeled the Price River in his writings. At that time, Price River was called White River, or Little White River, not fully understanding the geography of eastern Utah, and evidently not having access to Captain Gunnison's notes. William Huntington called it the Duchesne River, a serious mistake. The Duchesne River is in the Uinta Basin, an entirely different watershed, about 60 miles to the north. The mistake of mislabeling the river would cause confusion and trouble for other travelers in the year to come. The course of Price River is a rough and barren rock-strewn and gravel-ridged country, sprinkled with sage and juniper trees, if that, frankly. I mean, you get down near the Book Cliff area, it's just kind of white rock and just, yeah, sagebrush, and that's about it. Maybe some juniper trees. Mostly sagebrush. Anyway. The Book Cliffs form a towering barrier to the northeast. That's between Price and Green River. To the south and west, the flat tabletop of Cedar Mountain sits amid a jumble of purple rims and high cedar ridges. South of Cedar Mountain, the inverted dish of the San Rafael Swell marks the horizon. As the travelers climbed the sandy benches south of Price River near Woodside toward Chimney Rock Flat, they could see the stately spires of the San Rafael Reef rising up out of the desert floor like a great stone wall, running north and south for 50 miles. On the southern horizon, far away and across an ocean of sand hills, the snowy tips of the Henry Mountains glistened in the distance. The Henry Mountains were unexplored and unnamed at that time. None of the explorers mentioned them. As the travelers approached the Green River, they found the Indians they had encountered since Chief Walker and the New Mexican traders had blocked their trail in Salina Canyon. For over 150 miles, the Wasatch Mountains and Cache Valley had been completely devoid of Indians. Now the first natives they discovered were hurrying to get between them and the river. Like the Utes in Salina Canyon, this group might have been attempting to extract a toll by denying access to the river crossing. If the Indians could keep the travelers out in the sand flats west of the river, white men would be without water and feed for their livestock, easy prey for extortion. It is not known how many Indians were in the group, but there were enough to kindle a hot spark of fear among the dozen armed men of the expedition. Somehow the Mormons won the race. We're not told, but William Huntington probably sent armed men ahead on fast horses to secure a defensible spot along the river. It would have been risky to divide his men like that, but it might have been his only chance. Whatever he did must have been decisive and bold, because the white men were able to occupy the contested ground without a fight. As the ox teams arrived, the men quickly made improvised breastwork in a large grove of cottonwood trees. It was a good fighting position with grass for livestock, plenty of firewood, and easy access to the river. As the Mormons prepared their defensive barricade, they spooked a deer from its shady bed. The deer ran toward the Indians, who cornered it along the riverbank. Frustrated in their attempt to deny the explorers access to the river, the Indians turned their full attention to the deer. Their efforts to kill the deer revealed why they had not been more aggressive when challenging the Mormons. The Utes had no firearms, at least in the story told by Lexia Kurt Harris, which is called A Friendly Visit. However, there is evidence that they might have had firearms, but no ammunition. The previous year, in 1853, a party led by E.F. Beale and G.W. Heap encountered a band of Utes at the same river crossing. On the 25th of July, Gwyn Heap wrote in his diary, quote, "The Indians showed a disposition to be insolent, but our party kept close together, and they did not dare to commence hostilities. Most of them had rifles, and all had bows, and quivers full of arrows with obsidian heads. They accompanied us for some miles, importuning us for presents, and finally left us in bad humor. We had been able to conciliate these Indians with a few gifts, such as blankets, beads, tobacco, brass, wire, etc. We should not have had the least trouble with them." It is possible, even probable, that William Huntington's party was dealing with the same band of Utes. It was winter time, and the river was at its lowest ebb. Fearing the deer might escape across the river if they approached close enough to use their arrows, the Utes went to the Mormons for help. It was an odd sort of truce. Only minutes before, the natives had given the travelers a dreadful scare. Now they came asking for help as if nothing had happened, and they were all best of friends. It proved to be a valuable opportunity for the Mormons, giving them a chance to talk to the Indians, assess the threat, and determine who they were dealing with. Apparently, the talk went well because good relations were quickly established. Impatient to get the task at hand, the Utes asked for a white man to bring his gun and kill the deer. One of the Mormons complied, cautiously leaving the defensive breastwork. The man followed the Utes to the willows along the river. As soon as the unnamed marksman could see the deer hiding in the thicket, he dropped the animal with one shot from his muzzle-loading rifle at extreme range. The Indians were impressed. 2 days later, after Mormons had rested themselves and their livestock, the Indians allowed them to cross the river and continue their journey without further incident. After crossing the Green River, the exploring party continued east about 12 miles to the vicinity of Floy Wash. There, the old Spanish Trail split into a northern and southern branch. Gunnison's wagon tracks continued east on the northern branch, while the hoofprints of the southern route turned to the right. The travelers made the turn to the right. From that point on, the exploring party was truly exploring. From where they left Gunnison's trail, Huntington's men could see the beginnings of Red Rock country of southern Utah. Off in the distance, a ragged skyline of colorful sandstone buttes and rocky rims peeked over the sage-covered hills. Beyond that, the snowy heights of the Elk Mountain, which is the LaSalle Mountain, shimmered in the afternoon haze. So you see this as you turn to go towards Moab. You've still got this sagebrush kind of area, but then you can see just off in the distance that those peaks of the LaSalle Mountains, which I guess is Elk Mountain. And, excuse me, kitty, you be in the way. But you're still cute. But what you don't see is as you get there, there's going to be a drop down and you'll see red rock. And that's as you're going into the Moab area. And you'll have a turnout to go up into the Arches area before you hit Moab. But it's a beautiful drive. All right. William Huntington called it the Elk Mountain. It might have been the first time that name was applied. Unfortunately, his source for the name was not recorded. The high forehead, his native guide, might have told him the Elk Mountains of Colorado, about 100 miles to the east. He might have known about the Elk Mountains of Colorado from the writings of Colonel Fremont and others. If he did think he had found the Elk Mountains of Colorado, it underscores again his lack of understanding of the geography of the region. Like mislabeling the Price River, it was a serious mistake. I mean, that can be if you... Here's the thing. Like, I love geography. I love it because I have maps. If all you have is the stories of people, and you're walking these areas, you're like, oh, this looks like what people have talked about. Do you really know the lay of the land? Like, I'm blessed to sit here and, what do? I just take a second, I open my phone, and, oh, look, I have a complete topographical map with labels and, major roads indicated and other things like that, where, oh, hey, here's the Castle Valley they're talking about, that goes down to Moab, that has another now called Castle Valley, and that kind of stuff. So I get to know the lay of the land. I get to know, oh, wow, there's this really cool upswell here, there's this really cool downswell here, etc. Like, that whole Castle Valley and everything is part of that uplift that occurred that makes the Colorado Plateau. And so it's just really cool, fascinating topography and fascinating stuff happens because of that. That's why we have Arches and Goblin Valley and Zion's Canyon in the very southern central part of Utah, and so much more. And it's all because of the Colorado Plateau uplift. It's gorgeous stuff. So, I don't blame him. I know it's a serious mistake. But at the same time, I'm like, can you blame him if he doesn't have his own actual maps to go on? So I was trying to think about they don't really label canyons on maps here. Because you come out of the canyon and you hit Helper, and then Helper's a tiny little thing compared to Price, just a few miles further down the road when you're coming south from Salt Lake to the Moab area. So I'm wondering if that's the canyon that they were stopped at, is basically right near Helper. But the Duchesne River, for example, you'll see in the bottom center, I have Price in the top of what would be, they're calling Castle Valley. You have to go over the entire set of mountain ranges to get to Duchesne and the Duchesne River. So, as you can see there. So that's why it was a serious mistake, and he truly mislabeled it. And yeah, it's just a crazy, interesting place altogether. Oh, really? Okay, so, yeah, I remember one time when I was bored, I followed where the Green River went. It's fascinating. Green River goes straight up through those mountains, that uplift, and it just goes, like, right up into and through Dinosaur National Monument in the very northeastern corner of Utah. But what's funny is that if you, again, keep following Green River, it winds its way north into Wyoming, I believe, and it just practically goes just north to south from its origin, because I was one day having fun finding the origin of rivers and how they went. Green River just cuts straight down south, and then, again, just continues straight south through Utah, basically, and winds its way down into the canyon area, Canyonlands National Park. So from Moab, if you go southwest, because the Colorado River comes from the northeast to the, well, for you it would be like this, from the northeast to the southwest. The Green River goes straight down, and they meet in Canyonlands. And you have the confluence of the Green River and the Colorado River. So it's just, the Green River is just a funny river to me because of how much it's very north-south oriented. Because a lot of the other rivers are going to wind around and do a bunch of stuff. Oh, you want some loves and attentions down there. Okay. I'll continue on with the story. My cat's reminding me. All right. They were probably toll takers. They, let's see here. All right. He was talking about it being Elk Mountains. It was a serious mistake. 2 or 3 days of travel from the Green River brought the explorers to the top of Moab Canyon. Distant spires, huge sandstone fins, and red rock rainbows could be seen off to the east. But the travelers made no mention of that. No mention that they ever saw the natural wonders that would become Arches National Park. Unless there was something that got, because think about the entrance to Arches. You're going along this flat plain type area with the sagebrush, etc. Suddenly there's a drop down into really red rock country, a whole different layer of rock. And as you're coming into Moab Valley, you're just following that. To get to Arches, as you're going down this canyon, there's kind of a small curve, and you'd have to cross what kind of river is it? It's a river or a stream. And then you have to go up the other side to get into where Arches is. Let's see here. Here's Spanish Valley. There's Moab. So you just go north of Moab, following the road there, get to the Arches National Park Visitor Center. There's, what little stream is that? It is the Moab Canyon. Oh, that's the Moab Canyon Pathway. I could have sworn there was like a little stream. But really this is the entrance. Oh no, I'm thinking of the Colorado River. But so as you're coming down into this, you're gonna see there's a canyon in the top here that the road is following. Okay? And then you see how it starts to widen out? You have to go up the other side, up and follow those fins to get into the Arches National Park. There's no reason to assume anything's up there. You did not see that coming in, because as you were coming in, let me zoom out a little bit. All you see is that, okay, if you follow the road, you've got some kind of canyon formations that take you that way, sure. But more or less, if you're trying to follow the general gentle slope and some sort of a trail, then why would you go up into the Arches area? There's just like nothing really there for you. And the whole of the Arches area is really, really off to the right, where if you started following these canyons, it would have been an abrupt, so here's the very tendril of that little canyon. That's an abrupt drop-off to then take you right into the Arches area without having to go down and then back up. And so you'd skip it altogether. There's no reason for them to go that way. So of course they wouldn't have said anything, but that's me. They were focused on their journey. The country was too wild and too treacherous to be picturesque to them. Every canyon was a challenge. Every challenge another round of back-breaking work to get the wagons through and the livestock across. To them it was a land of rocks, sand, and cactus. Scenic landscapes were only obstacles. The wonders of nature, an ordeal. The trail down Moab Canyon was steep, with a huge sandstone wall on the west side, a high rocky ridge on the east. The canyon narrowed as they descended. At the bottom they came to a place they could not get. The wagons descended. At the bottom they came to a place they could... The canyon narrowed as they descended, and at the bottom they came to a place where the canyons could not get the wagons down. Men and animals could continue down a steep trail, but the wagons could not squeeze through. Their only option was to dismantle the wagons and lower them and their cargo one piece at a time, with the ropes over a sandstone ledge of about 25 feet to the bottom. See? Nowadays, we have this nice, different kind of bridges and rivers and things like that. I'm trying to figure out the spot they're talking about. Was that coming into the canyon of... Well, it's all smoothed out now because of the freeway. I'm wondering if that's what it was, because that narrow canyon I was talking about before it opens up to where Arches is, I'm wondering if they're talking about that, because that very well could have been right where a drop was, but that's been smoothed out by the construction of the road. So I don't see any drop-off, and then next you have to cross the Colorado River. So, geez Louise, I think, in the Mormon battalion, as they were coming from California back to Utah, and they were making a wagon road about 1 mile a day. They built fires on top of the rocks to break up the rocks so they could make the wagon trail. And, talk about effort, right? I wonder if they could have done the same thing if sandstone reacts the same way. Maybe it doesn't. But the men christened the site the Jumping Off Place. It was near the bottom of Moab Canyon, about half a mile north of today's entrance to Arches National Park. Nothing remains today. Highway construction, dynamite smoothed the flattened the jumping-off place in the early decades of the 20th century. Their next challenge was the Grand Colorado River. They found the river about a mile below the jumping-off place. While the mighty Colorado is a very large river by Western standards, the explorers encountered it at the best possible time to cross over. It was November, and like the Green River, the Colorado was near her lowest level of the year. The party had no trouble crossing over. On the south shore, they entered what they called the Elk Mountain Valley, the site of today's Moab, Utah. The valley intersects the river at a 90-degree angle from the south. After traveling almost 200 miles over Castle Valley's alkali flats, desert washes, and rocky rims, the valley was a welcome sight. The explorers considered it the first good place for a settlement they had found on their journey across eastern Utah. In his letter to the Deseret News, William Huntington describes it as a beautiful valley, 20 miles long and 5 to 10 miles wide, with good soil and grazing range, well timbered with cottonwood trees, and well watered. Other people considered the valley a good spot for settlement too. For millennia, the area had been home to numerous Indian cultures. The desert Archaic, Anasazi, and Fremont peoples were all there in turn. But most recently, the Sherabect Utes called the valley home. Like most Utes of the day, they were hunters and gatherers who supplemented their livelihood by trading. Sometimes they traded slaves. This particular band often acted as toll takers at the Spanish Trail River, crossing near Moab, a perfect place to detain and tax travelers. Surprisingly, William Huntington makes no mention of seeing any Indians in the valley. As they approached the south end of the valley, William Huntington and his men decided to cache their wagons and push ahead with pack animals. Later, Huntington told the Deseret News the decision was made because the trail ahead was a very rough and mountainous region, difficult to pass over, even with pack animals, being covered with dense forests of cedar. But traveling the route today on Highway 191, the country appears to be no rougher or more difficult for wagons than Salina Canyon, Casa Valley, and Price River drainage, places they had already traversed with little difficulty. As mentioned earlier, the decision to cache the wagons might have been pre-approved by Brigham Young. The men were probably all in agreement that they had found the place to recommend for settlement. Yeah. The location was perfect. The Elk Mountain Valley straddled the old Spanish Trail at the only good crossing place on the Colorado River, and the site had everything pioneer farmers could ask for: fresh running water, grass timber, promising soil, and a favorable climate. and it is obvious the wagons were slowing them down considerably. They had been on the trail for about a month, and they were still many miles from the Navajo lands. Since Floy Wash, they had been following a pack trail with the first wheeled vehicles to pass over such horse tracks. The effort involved constant labor. The men often had to move rocks, shovel a path through washouts, cut down trees and brush, and help push wagons up steep and sandy hillsides. Then, too, they didn't know how many more jumping-off places or tight slot canyons they might encounter before finding the Navajos. One thing they were sure of, they could travel much faster and easier without the wagons. In a sandy area at the south end of the valley, near where the trail started into the steep hills to the south, the explorers cached their wagons by dismantling them and burying them in the sand. With the wagons, they stashed their full complement of agricultural tools and seeds, heavy bars of musket lead, and many other miscellaneous items they could not easily stuff into pack saddles. They named the creek near where they abandoned the wagons. Pack Saddle Creek is today's Pack Creek in honor of their new method of conveyance. Where is Pack Creek? Is it on the southern end of the... Again, I love geography, so pardon me. Pack Creek. Yeah, there's little tiny creeks that go through Moab, too. There's Mill Creek as one of them. And Pack Creek, okay, interesting. So here's these two creeks that are like, okay, so when you first come into Moab, there's like downtown Moab that's just kind of, as you're coming in, you kind of go straight south, because remember, it's for you, it's oriented like this, and you have this north-south orientation of the freeway, and then you'll see it curve as you're going out. Well, what you're doing is you're actually crossing two creeks. There's a Mill Creek, and then there is the Pack Creek. And so, let me show you the picture of it. If you look at the tiny blue lines, the top northern one is Mill Creek. The southern blue line is Pack Creek. You can see that orientation of the road that I was talking about. If you've ever driven through the Moab, you recall the curve that happens in there easily. So if you kept going, really the Pack Creek kind of just starts in the middle of the drainage area, a little more southeast, as you keep going. So, interesting. Yeah, it's really right near the... It's not that bad. Then you get back, get down to Wilson Arch, keep going to Church Rock. Sorry, the road to Monticello is fun and fascinating. I love it. Anyway, but yeah, that particular whole valley, if you look at it, kind of stretch it as it goes farther away from the Colorado River. You can see that it's just a big old kind of slow ramp. And so the farther that you get away from where Moab is, the more sparse it becomes, because it's just gets farther and farther away from the river. All right. So that's what they're talking about, Pack Creek. What the men did with their oxen is not told. They probably took them on their journey, herding them along as an emergency food supply or planning to trade them to the Navajos. The only other option was to turn them loose in the Elk Mountain Valley, hoping to round them up later. Turning the oxen loose was highly unlikely. Oxen were valuable, and they could be traded for horses and blankets. And if turned loose, a gentle domesticated ox would have been manna from heaven for an Indian out hunting with a bow and arrow. With their burden lightened, the exploring party continued south, following the old Spanish trail. They had only a few horses and mules, and most of them were needed as pack animals. Only the scouts who explored the trail ahead were allowed to ride. The other men walked, leading the pack animals and probably herding the oxen. Some of the oxen might have been used as pack animals. It was not a common practice, but necessity might have made it an option. Trudging over the sand and sage, the explorers pushing along, hopefully searching for the San Juan River, which they called in proper King's English St. John's River. If they had a guide other than high forehead or any information at all about the country ahead, they failed to mention it. They had been told the Navajos lived south of St. John's River, and they were determined to find them. The party followed the Spanish trail to a point near La Salle, Utah, where the trail veered southeast into southern Colorado. They boldly left the trail and continued south, following the general course of today's Highway 191. After traveling about 45 miles, they dropped into Recapture Canyon and followed the creek southward to White Mesa, south of Blanding. Wow, they have really gone on from there. Just south of White Mesa, they turned west over the Sand Ridges, which is Big Bench, and dropped into Cottonwood Wash drainage, expecting a south-flowing watercourse to take them to the San Juan River, which it did. After traveling 100 miles on foot from where they had cached their wagons, the weary explorers found the San Juan. After refreshing themselves for a day or two with good water and grass for their animals, the explorers crossed the Rubicon, San Juan, to search for the Navajos. Their river crossing was probably near Sand Island, just west of Bluff. The Navajos didn't know they were coming, and there was no welcome mat on the south side of the river. Whew, that ends the chapter. Some notes on scouting Red Rock Country. Two major incidents had recently caused serious contention between Mormons and slave traders in the Old Spanish Trail. The arrest and confiscation of property and slaves from a party led by Don Pedro Leon in 1851, and the arrest of slave trader Dr. William Clark Bowman in 1853. Pedro Leon was a member of it, and of his party were sent home destitute. See Sandra Jones' The Trial of Don Pedro Leon Lujan, University of Utah Press, and Dr. Bowman was killed by Indians shortly after being released from Mormon custody. See Daniel W. Jones' 40 Years Among the Indians. Ooh, interesting. There are two Castle Valleys in Utah. The larger is in Carbon and Emery County and is the focus of the narrative of the book. This I did not know. The smaller Castle Valley is the town and valley east of Moab, Utah, which is the one I was used to. That's why it confused me. No journal or official church record has been found. Some information about the routes and incidents of the expedition come from diary entries made by members later of the pioneering party of 1855. So, notes about that. Mormons referred to this band as Green River Utes. Most likely they were Sherebecht Utes, the same tribe that lived in the Moab area, the ones that held them up. Interesting. Okay, so the last part. Next is going to be cannibals and Gadianton robbers. All right, last little bit of geography about where they went. Because they went really, basically, what is the road now. If they kept going south, they would have... so here at the very top is the Moab Valley. They keep going south. You start coming kind of up out of the valley, then you have to go through some canyons. There we go. And you got things like Hole in the Rock, Wilson Arch, Church Rock. Just keep going. And you're slowly basically rising up out of this canyon area. And as you go past Church Rock, you'll see at the very bottom, you'll see Wilson Arch. And let me turn up the light here. That'll make it easier to see. So Hole in the Rock, you keep going, and there's Monticello down there. It's a super tiny town. I don't understand why people don't mention it as much, but it's really a lovely place. But right about there is kind of coming up further out of this canyon-esque valleys, because you're coming to where this mountain is, which is, I think, Monticello Mountain. I'm not sure what it's called, but that's what I call it, at least. It kind of sticks out. It's like a little branch of Bear's Ears, I guess? No, Bear's Ears is these two things way over there. Okay, to the west. But from Monticello, you keep going south. They talked about Blanding and Bluff, and there you see Blanding and Bluff. And you can see San Juan River is just basically south of Bluff there. So they were basically following the road in White Mesa. So here you have Monticello's at the very top. You have Blanding, White Mesa, and there's the San Juan River. So literally the road that we follow today is probably very close to what they were following then, which is way, way cool. And so they were thinking, well, we just cross this and we're in Navajo territory, which is kind of true because the Navajo Nation is literally the gray area on the map now here in the Four Corners area. So I'm going to zoom out quite a bit, and you'll see we've got all of southern Utah. It'll show Blanding. The gray area is the Navajo Nation area. So they had really gone quite far, probably to get to the San Juan from where they were at Moab is just about as far as coming from Price to Moab. So they basically doubled their, distances by leaving their pack animals there. So, spiritual messages to take from this historical record. I would say that if you view this as having faith in their leaders and standing up for themselves, they've had to do that twice. So, and by just being steady and patient, they were able to avoid conflict and even help. When they were at Green River, they even helped the natives there. So whenever you're given a daunting task, as long as you apply your best effort towards it and go forward knowing that God's going to guide you, He'll help you through these situations, even if really weird, insurmountable situations come up, continue to have faith. Truly trust in God, and He'll help make the way clear for you. And think through your options cool-headedly. Think about what really will give you the best results, and work with God on your problems, and He'll make a way possible. That's what I would say. I'd also say that what you do may seem insignificant, or may seem, well, that's all that was necessary, but you have no idea the implications of what your actions are now. For these people who were explorers, the trails that they found, the ways that they went, became the same routes that we use to have thousands of people travel each day to get to and from different places. The same people that helped explore these areas have descendants that shape landscapes over time through their efforts. Every life might seem small and insignificant, and I understand that. But funny enough, there's a deep impact, even in what you'd think is the most inconsequential of lives. You're not an explorer. You're not building a big company. You're not helping feed and clothe hundreds of people, but you're just doing service. You're just a regular employee working at a job that you just do to make the ends meet, and you live in a house that somebody else made. You're going to sell or pass it on somewhere else. You're a life that is making an impact. What you do to help others, even if it's just as an employee, changes people's lives for a little bit, and that little bit can have consequences. And more importantly, especially if you're a parent and you've got kids, they're going to go on to live lives, and that's a greater impact than you know. And if you don't have children, then the people that you interact with and how you interact with them make a difference. So each life is quite significant, and it's important to do your best with what you have. God wants you to be a good steward of all that you have, including your own life and materials. So that's the spiritual lesson I'll give on this historical account, and I hope God's Spirit stays with you today and always. We'll see you.